The bomb, the bank, the mullah, and the poppies. A tale of deception. Iqbal Chand Malhotra. This is a very interesting book published by Bloomsbury, and Iqbal Chand Malhotra is a brilliant journalist. He has written Kashmir, the Untold Story, Declassified, Red Fear, the China Threat, Dark Secrets, Politics, Intrigue, and Proxy War in Kashmir. This book was published in 2023, a very interesting book by all means. The contents, as you can see: beginnings, transformation, expansion, providence, momentum, triangulating the narco-nuclear gospel, the Bush, brush off, wiping the slate clean, mounting pressures, birthing a new Frankenstein, the bomb is born by cesarean, the rot intensifies, the catastrophe, the plot thickens, Phoenix attempts to rise, the end game. The book is very interesting and worth reading. However, it has some basic flaws which need to be understood. Like, one his analysis needs a lot of, trimming and lot of modification, and then, he needs to get back to his sources and analyze that many of his assertions, although very, very, spicy and interesting, are, totally incorrect. The first thing is that drugs, he blames the BCCI and the various people, but fails to note that drugs were first used with great effect by the CIA. As you know, the Vietnam War, the Golden Triangle, it was a CIA project using drugs and morphia paste and so many other things to generate black funds. This was basically an American project. The project was shifted to Afghanistan in the Afghan war, and the Golden Triangle was created by the CIA, and the story is long. Chase Manhattan banks branches were established in Pakistan to siphon drug money as well as US aid to the Afghan insurgents. BCCI, of course, was there, but was a smaller player. How and why the BCCI was, cut to size and finally eliminated is another story. While serving in the army during the brass tacks, we saw the whole operation very closely. Frankly, the Indian government was not clear. Even Rajiv Gandhi was clueless about brass tacks. And this point has been discussed in detail by various Indian sources and officers who I don't want to name. But notably, S.S. Gill, who served as secretary with Indira Gandhi, wrote in his book that Rajiv Gandhi was absolutely clueless about brass tacks. And this was a basically Sundarji project. And Sundarji was trying to project himself, create a situation which leads to war, divide Pakistan by obtaining the succession of Sindh after an Indian thrust, severs the north-south Pakistani communication and all the nonsense, I was serving in the 1st Armored Division when the brass tacks took place, and then a sensational story appeared in the India Today. in which great credit was given to some Pakistani figures. Many years later, after retirement in 1993, I discovered that the India Today story was totally financed by a security agency I don't want to name, but which people can understand. India Today was financed to publish a story about brass tacks, a totally bogus and false story, so that certain figures in Pakistan are projected. Frankly, why brass tacks was aborted was because Sundarji simply lost his nerve, and for about a week Indians could not track the Pakistani strategic reserve, the 1st Armored Division. The Pakistani intention was not to deceive the Indians, as happens in actual operations and in history. The Pakistani intention was merely to relocate the division, the 1st Armored Division, to a more secure location. But as you see, as Clausewitz described, in war even small fingers cast big shadows and huge shadows and disturb the strategic equilibrium of so-called men in very high positions. Sundarji basically was not a strong man. He was unnerved when Indian intelligence could not track the 1st Armored Division. He was simply unnerved, and that was the end of brass tacks. No credit to the 1st Armored Division commander Hamid Gol or to Pakistanis who were just relocating the division to a safer location. The intention was not to unnerve Sundarji, but Sundarji got unnerved. Just like the Indians in Lahore in 1965, when they could have easily crossed the BRB canal and entered Lahore. But they suddenly lost their nerve and they thought that some great trap is being planned, and end of the story. That is a separate issue. Lastly, the author's whole claim about the Pakistani nuclear bomb is false in the sense as we saw it in the Soviet-Afghan war. My uncle was ambassador of Pakistan in Moscow at that time, at the height of Soviet-Afghan war in the early 80s, and when General Zia met Gorbachev along with Safzada Yaqub about 1987, my uncle was part of the team. He can be seen in the photograph. I had long discussions with him. And of course, when I visited the CIA held seminar in 1996, co-hosted by the Society of Military History, again I met very old CIA hands, retired people, again long discussions. Then my stint in Afghanistan, 2003 to 2021, 18 years, met a very large number of Americans, NATO officers, retired people, Indians, Iranians, Russians, you name it. The bottom line is that the Americans allowed their subsidiary vessel, the Pakistani state led by Zia. Some people would call it a concubine, but I would call it a vessel. The vessel was the base for attacking the Soviet Union from bases which were secure. The only strategic danger to the American vessel against the USSR in 1979-89 was from India, which could actually physically invade Pakistan and destroy this American base against USSR. So simply put, the Americans decided that Pakistan would be allowed to acquire a nuclear deterrent so that the Indians dare not invade Pakistan. Because if Indians invaded Pakistan, the whole American design against the USSR would have collapsed. Now Indians came very close to invading Pakistan in 1984 when they mobilized their army in response to the Sikh rebellion in Punjab, and in 1984 mid-September Pakistani reserves and the army had to be deployed close to the border, and the situation was very bad. The Indians could have invaded Pakistan, but by the kinetic energy of bullets delivered by two Sikhs who were much larger than characters like Rajiv Gandhi or Zia or even the Americans, two Sikhs, just lower rank people, lower than grade 17, inspectors of police, they changed the history by pumping many bullets into the body of Durga Devi, the Indian Prime Minister. The Indian plan to attack Pakistan crumbled into dust, not because of Zia, not because of all this nonsense claims about, the cricket diplomacy and all that. It's all nonsense, And, the year 1984 was a bad year for Pakistan. But two Sikh inspectors, by divine design, saved Pakistan by kinetic energy of bullets. Durga Devi eliminated the 1984 threat to Pakistan, evaporated. I remember Indian team was in Sialkot and I was in Pasroor. My regiment's officers had gone to watch the match, and since I disliked cricket, I decided to go to Wazirabad to visit my sister. And when on the way back I discovered that the match had ended in the middle because Durga Devi had gone. And when I crossed the Deg river back to my regiment in Qila Soba Singh, 29 cavalry at that time, the whole 8th Armoured Brigade was washing vehicles in the Deg river, rejoicing, jumping, dancing. The situation was, unforgettable. And the same brigade had been hiding in the rucks and the forests before this Durga Devi affair took place. Similarly, in 1987, again, number one, the Pakistanis had a nuclear deterrent, and second, Sundarji was a weak man. So again, the Indian chance to invade Pakistan evaporated. Let's be very frank, the Pakistanis never had the capability to do it. If you study the history of Punjab and the frontier, they were so hopeless that they were being ruled by 8% Sikh minority till 1849, and they were only saved by the British East India Company in 1849, who destroyed the Sikh power. So to conjure so many conspiracy theories and to elevate the Pakistanis so high is absolute nonsense. Pearls of pure and unadulterated nonsense. They could never have done it on themselves. Of course, the Americans had strategic reasons to allow Pakistan to acquire a nuclear deterrent as early as 1983-84 because they had to preserve the base against the USSR. You can write any number of books about all this, but these harsh facts nobody can refute or deny.